What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out, the only football podcast where you will not hear an in depth analysis of Taylor Swift's dating life this week. I know it was fun. I know everybody had a good time with her at Arrowhead and the whole Travis Kelce thing this week, but companies like ESPN, all those guys, they get so wrapped up in all of this off the field stuff and ignore all of the great stuff that happened on the field. Not something we do here. Matt is going to be on in just a minute to break down week 3 of the NFL season with me. Huge upsets, giant blowouts, and why I want Mac Jones gone as the quarterback of the New England Patriots. All of that and more coming up in just a minute. But first, as a reminder, we set up an email, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. We really appreciate you guys listening to the podcast, and we would really like to hear from you as well. Reach out to us at fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know what's working for you, what's not, what you want to hear more of on the podcast, guest topics, whatever's on your mind, or just come and chit chat with me and Matt. We'd love to hear from you guys. But let's bring Matt in and get to week 3 of the NFL season. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. We are fresh off of week 3 of the NFL season. I was looking at my notes and I didn't feel like there was really that much good football this week. The Chargers Vikings game was fun and like one of the more wonderfully weird games you will ever watch in your life.
But that's not good football.
Yeah, I mean, the game was okay. It was 28-24, but like,
No, but like the quality of the football that was played.
well, this was the thing. Like, this week was marred by massive upsets, massive blowouts.
Yeah.
And then even the games that were close, like the Patriots beat the Jets 15-10. I wouldn't say it was a quality football game. I didn't enjoy watching it. Packers beat the Saints 18-17 in a game where the Saints were up 17-0 going into the fourth. Packers all of a sudden score 18 points. But like, it's fun if you're a Packers fan, but not like a quality football game. So I don't know. I didn't really think that there was a great game this week. Like, I didn't necessarily enjoy watching a lot of the football that I saw over the weekend.
It was certainly not a week where like there was any particular game where you're like, this was the game of the week.
I just like Chargers Vikings because I was like texting you updates.
Yeah.
And absolutely incredible Vikinging and chargering. Like they charged and they viked all over the field on Sunday. And it was everything I wanted from that matchup, including Minnesota dropping their third straight one-score game of the season to drop to 0-3 in one-score games after being 11-0 last season. Absolutely incredible.
No, now they just have, like what is it, 2.5% chance of making the playoffs?
God, would have sucked to have picked them. But yeah, week 3. So I wrote down upsets, blowouts, and ugly football to talk about. So let's start with the upsets because that was kind of the fun part of this week.
Yeah.
The first big one, Arizona 28, the Dallas Cowboys 16. Dallas was favored by 11.5 going into the game. Before we start shitting on Dallas, first of all, I want to give us some credit because a couple weeks ago,
we gave him some love.
Yeah, we gave him some love. And we told everybody on the podcast when we were doing eliminator pool picks that Arizona was going to bite somebody in the ass this season.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't think it was going to be Dallas in week 3 after what we have seen so far.
I mean, I wasn't like trying to pick a game, but if you told me that it would be Dallas, it wouldn't have surprised me at all.
If we really would have thought about it going into last week, with
It's
how
the
much
most Dallas thing ever.
it is, with all the hype they were getting, and people are like, "Oh, are they the best team in the league? Are they a Super Bowl contender?" Yeah. Dallas Cowboys fans are like, "This is our year." But this is what happens to the Cowboys.
Yeah,
they get hyped up by the media, and then they get humbled, and then they get hyped up, and then they get humbled. And this was just the first of a few humblings that we will see this season.
Yeah, I mean, before we really go in on Dallas here, I mean, let's like give specific credit here to the Cardinals. First of all, like all 3 weeks so far, those dudes have been playing hard for Gannon. Like, and I know it's early, so like the Spirit obviously couldn't have been beaten out of them yet, or I I say couldn't, but we've seen Chicago, so maybe not. Um, but like it, yeah, when you're not competitive, like it's it's good to see that your players are still really playing hard. And second of all, like both offensively and defensively, they came in with a game plan based on what has been shown by Dallas, and they outcoached them by a fucking country mile.
We had the Doug Peterson replacing Urban Meyer
Mhm.
situation in Jacksonville, where the Jags were just like a better football team because they had an adult in the room.
Mhm.
And then this offseason, people were looking for that. And they're like, oh, what team gets a new coach and is like a lot better? And could it just be Arizona? Could it be like Cliff Kingsbury is like a child in
Yeah,
an adult's body? And, you know, we joked about it before that like
yeah.
he's yelling at Kyler Murray for not studying and needs to get off his
Hmm.
Xbox while he's like ripping shots in his kitchen with his friends. But like Gannon's like a real football coach, right?
Yeah.
And like the team's playing pretty solid football. The problem for the Cardinals is just that they have much less talent than everybody that they
Yep.
play.
This is exactly where Dan Campbell started. Not a lot of talent. Dude's playing hard, coming on with some good game plans, but just like not always able to get it done because you just don't have the dudes. This like I still think overall this year is gonna be rough for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
But like I'm having a hard time looking at them playing these games and not saying like they're absolutely headed in the right direction.
The big difference between Gannon and Campbell is that Gannon has the personality of a wet piece of paper.
Maybe with the media, yes. But whatever he's doing, behind closed doors with his players, it's working.
Did you see the tape of him giving like a locker, or there's a video of him giving like a locker room speech trying to hype up the guys? And
It's
it's
not
not just
great.
it's not just
It's
with the media. He is doing a good job though, so credit to
yeah.
him. It's amazing they could just bring in Josh Dobbs like 2 days before
Yeah.
the season starts and be like, "Yeah, you're the starter, Josh. Have fun." And then they're competitive the first 2 weeks, and then they beat Dallas in week 3.
Yeah.
Do you think management's pissed that they won this game?
Absolutely. But on the other side, like they totally got exposed. Like this is not what you can afford having on tape in week 3, right? I mean, the defense is going to be good defense all year because they've got a lot of talent. But like, you just saw an offense that absolutely cannot play from behind. If you can expose the defense a little bit for losing its top cornerback and just kind of keep your defense off the field a little bit, then suddenly they're really not all that dangerous.
Yeah, it was a really lazy, sloppy effort for the Cowboys. 13 penalties for 107 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't stop Arizona a single time in the first half. Arizona had 5 drives. It went field goal, touchdown, touchdown, field goal, field goal.
Yeah.
Dak Prescott is always one of those quarterbacks, and we've said this a couple times early this season. It's like if Dallas is playing really good in the other phases of the game and they don't have to rely on Dak, then
Mm-hmm.
he can be good. But as soon as they're like, Dak, we need you to go win this game, and he throws like I think he threw 44 passes in this
Yeah.
game. The sweet spot for Dak is like between 25 and 30 passes. I don't want him throwing 40 plus.
Yeah.
And it shows up.
Well,
He goes and like throws the game losing interception at the end as well.
and not just the game losing interception, but like inexcusable. Like that's a rookie interception, right? Like, that's not something that you want to see on tape from a guy in year 3. He's been in the league 8 years.
Yeah, this is why I just think the destiny of Dallas is the same this year as it is every year. They're probably
I think it's even lower.
I know you do. You didn't pick them to make the playoffs, but
Yeah.
I think they're going to win between like 10 and 12 games still and just lose in the first round of the playoffs. So that's just kind of it. That's just kind of the Dallas Cowboys experience.
It's a very real possibility they're 0-4 against the Eagles and the command. I refuse the Fighting Georges. I'm not going to say that other name. It's
I
bullshit.
hard disagree there because the Fighting Georges look like absolute trash this week.
They did, but they've got better weapons than by like a long shot than what they went up against this week. So if they're struggling against Hollywood Brown and Michael Wilson, I think they're gonna have a hard time against Scary Terry and Dotson.
I kind of am writing this one off a little bit for Dallas. Like until we see more this stuff happens. Remember a couple of years ago we got knocked out of the eliminator pool because we picked the Bengals going into the Jets and Mike White threw for like 458 and then the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. I don't know, man. It happens.
NFL legend Mike White.
Yes. People overlook like teams that are super hyped up like this overlook opponents like the Cardinals, and these things happen. I'm kind of pissed that it happened to the Cowboys this week because they play my crap team next week. And I was like, man, if Dallas had come back to win this one and they were just like a team that was begging for a loss, maybe there's a chance we could give it to them. I expect them to bounce back next week.
Here's the thing. I would accept that argument if their head coach wasn't Mike McCarthy.
Yep, that's fair. I mean, the Patriots could definitely go in there and win next week, but with how crappy our offensive line has been so far this season going up against Micah Parsons, my hopes are not high. The second big upset of the weekend, the Indianapolis Colts defeat the Baltimore Ravens 22-19. Baltimore was favored by 7.5. This game just reminds me that turnovers are just a killer. Baltimore fumbles 4 times and loses 2. And like when you fumble, even when you don't lose it, it's typically a negative play.
Yep.
And it's just such a weird, like, this is just the type of game that Baltimore has too. Like the Cowboys have that type of game. Baltimore totally has this type of game in them where it's weird. It doesn't make sense. You let Zach Moss run for 122 yards on 30 carries and have a 23 receiving yards and a touchdown as well. The Ravens have this in them. Gardner Minshew has this in him too. Like Minshew kind of reminds me of Taylor Heineke, where like the stat line's not great. You look at it and it's like it doesn't really make sense how he won the game, but he does like just enough to win, and he makes the plays at the right moment to win them the game.
Mahomes is always just fast enough to get away, but like not as good.
Well, it's just like he'll, go
like
2 for his first 10.
Yeah.
And then just one drive, he'll go like 6 for 6 for like 70 yards and a touchdown. And his stats will be, 26 for 44 for 220 yards. But he'll have gotten the touchdown, or he'll have gotten them into field goal range when he really needed to. He'll come up and make the play. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense, but it just happens. You combine that with Zach Moss running the ball down their throats. And it's like, oh yeah, here we are. The Colts won somehow.
Ravens fans are certainly up in arms about their last offensive play, saying that was absolutely pass interference on Zay Flowers, which, yes, It's absolutely true. He was absolutely mugged. Also, you had no reason to allow that game to get to overtime. You had so many chances to take control of that game. And yes, I know there's a ton of injuries. But if you look at the guys who are out there on the field, you are still significantly more talented than the team that you were playing. And you don't have the excuse of having Anthony Richardson out there, who is just a big play waiting to happen one way or another. You just had to play smart football, and you didn't. You kept a bad team in the game. And when you do that, you're basically just flipping a coin.
That's an old Bill Belichick saying too, is there's over 100 plays in the course of a football game. And when you let it come down to one, anything can happen.
Yeah.
You know, and it's a missed call here. It's
Yeah.
the ball bounces weird. Like we say this every year. It's 22 grown men out there throwing an
Mm-hmm.
oblong ball
Yeah.
at each other. Things are going to happen.
And Dan Campbell had a quote a few weeks ago too that like the first like really like 2 to 3 games of the year, the teams that win more games are the ones that make the least mistakes, not the ones that make the most plays. And like right now, none of these teams are like really firing on all cylinders like to the capacity that they are capable of.
There's one that is.
Yeah.
We'll talk about them in a sec,
That's
but
yeah. There one was that was very intentionally doing that. But like by and large, like teams are still working through a lot of stuff at this point in the year. And the way you win games at that stage is to minimize your mistakes. And Baltimore did not do that.
no, I mean, like I said, they fumbled the ball 4
Yeah.
times.
But
Nothing drives coaches crazier than fumbles.
yeah, but like we talked about this week one, like Baltimore did this. This is why we like didn't choose them one week in the survivor pool. They have these games where it's just like, what the hell were you even doing out there? And then they'll come back and be fine, but it's like, yo, just don't.
It seems like another case of like a team getting super hyped up this week and then overlooking an
Yeah.
opponent, because after they beat the Bengals last week, there was so many reports and just so many people coming out and just
Yeah.
being like, man, this is why they paid Lamar Jackson. He just controlled that game in a way we'd never seen him control a game before, blah, 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 blah. He didn't play bad in this one. He had like 100 rushing yards and a touchdown, throws for like 202, but it's like,
The ball has slipped out of his hands a lot early this year, though.
yeah, he wasn't great. Is Indy just gonna like win the AFC South?
By
Honestly,
accident, yes.
they're 2-1. Everybody else is 1-2. And man, Tennessee looks like total dog shit.
A new segment that we're gonna do later in this episode. Tannehill was going to originally be one of my choices, because that man cannot keep being trotted out on the field if this is what he's going to show.
Yeah, he was awful. I was concerned because Tennessee's defense actually made Deshaun Watson look like a decent starting quarterback. Like they made him look like a viable quarterback on Sunday. That was the best game that he's had for the Browns. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, I'm firing up all of my quarterbacks and wide receivers who are playing Tennessee because the secondary is ass again. But like they look like
Yeah. I just don't know like how much I can get geared up to play defense when I know that Tannehill is out there playing quarterback.
but they look bad. We're going to talk about Jacksonville here in a couple minutes, but like Jacksonville got pounded by Houston and has
Mhm.
not really looked good in the majority of the season, except for like 10 minutes against Indy in
Yeah.
week one. And then like Houston is Houston and won big this week, but Indy's already pounded them this year. So
Yeah. The thing about Jacksonville though, too, is that as rough as they've looked, they're really only a few plays of just executing away from like being undefeated.
well, I'm not no. maybe 2-1.
Yeah.
They
Well, I
lost
mean,
us by
they're
20
yeah.
this week.
There were a few plays where like if those plays get executed, that drive keeps going and they like the point swing there is pretty huge on one play.
Maybe I'll give you 2-1. I'm not going to go
Yeah,
undefeated after what happened to them against Houston, but I
that's
like,
fair. They got tanked by Dell though.
dude, Tank Dell, Small
Dude,
Boi SZN represent.
dude, can't jam what you can't touch.
Mm, he's good. Uh, just last thought before we go on to the next game. Baltimore is 12th in yards so far this season, 14th in points through 3 weeks, kind of middle of the pack.
Yeah.
They're breaking in a new offense, and I think Zay Flowers looks really good. But like, was everything else they brought in just kind of like a waste of money?
Yes.
Like they're paying OBJ $19 million this season. He has 5 catches so far this season.
Yeah.
He's already missing time. Zay looks awesome. They're happy to have Mandrews back, but like this is a very Baltimore Ravens thing to like have injuries all over the place and
Mm-hmm.
just kind of be meh at the skill positions. And they're like, all right, Lamar, get it done.
Yeah.
Because like they already lost Dobbins for the season. And now it's like, okay, back to the Gus Edwards, Justice Hill show in the backfield. That's something to be excited about.
I mean, maybe they bring in Melvin Gordon into the mix again.
Ooh.
Yeah. I will say the addition of Zay Flowers though, like makes such a huge difference because even not having much outside of him and Mandrews, like the explosive plays that he can generate are what that team has been missing.
Yeah, so we'll see how it goes. This is only 3 weeks into a brand new offense,
Yeah.
but I was looking at OBJ today and I was just like, they spent $19 million on this guy.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, it's not looking good for that transaction, but Zay Flowers is legit.
Last big upset of the weekend. The Houston Texans take down the Jacksonville Jaguars 37-17 in a game where Jacksonville was favored by 7.5. It's still totally possible that Jacksonville was just a 4-win team last season that got hot at the right time and then played the Chargers in the playoffs, who like we all know Chargers are going to charge. They're
Yeah.
1-2, and I don't think they've looked particularly great so far this season. Definitely like not what we expected from them.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think that everyone was expecting more, and they should have, because if you look at the roster, there's a lot more talent there. Like I said, like I do think there's a number of plays, a handful of plays out there that like could have significantly changed the trajectory of the games that they've played. Calvin Ridley, you got to catch that ball. Do you think there's potentially an element here too of this team was feeling themselves a little bit too much coming into the season? And now they have to figure out how to respond to the very clear reaction that the NFL disagrees because they're losing more games than they've won. So they've got to get back to basics and really just like lean into what we know works, which fortunately for them is Travis Etienne, because that definitely has worked.
I think you had a key point when we were doing the offseason review stuff too, is like, yeah, we all expect Jacksonville to improve and build on last season, but also their head coach is Doug Peterson. And
Yep.
do we really trust Doug Peterson to take a team to the next level? It kind of reminds me
I
of like,
there's a lot of people who do. I obviously have been very vocal about my belief that that's not necessarily the case, but there's a lot of vocal supporters of him.
it kind of reminds me of Frank Reich in Carolina, where they're
Mhm.
like, oh, we're bringing in a new coach. We're getting Bryce Young. It's Frank Reich. I was like, we all remember that Frank Reich is like sucks at coaching, right? Like Frank Reich is a horrible head coach, awful. So was Doug Peterson before they brought him in. So it's like it wouldn't totally shock me if they're not great. But 1 and 2, they go to London for the next 2 weeks, and they play the Falcons and the Bills. I was thinking like it's totally possible they come home 1 and 4, but if they go 2 and 0, do they just like move Jacksonville? They just like move the Jags to London for the rest of the year. They're just like, oh, okay, we're done. We're out of Jacksonville. We're the London Jags now.
They're working on doing it, it feels like. So,
I mean, it's coming eventually, but if you play better
yeah,
in London than you play at home, I mean, the other th-
seriously.
the other thing I wrote in my notes about this game is it time for us to apologize to CJ Stroud yet? Are you still holding out?
I mean, nothing he's done is contrary to what I believed about him coming out. Like, I know that he's capable of playing the position, but I want to see what happens to him when he gets popped in the mouth 3 plays in a row and has to go back out there. Like, that's my question because I said like my pro comp for him is Dak Prescott. I like Dak's an NFL quarterback. Like he's fine. I don't want Dak as my quarterback because he's going to keep you in the middle of no man's land.
I'm just throwing it out there because so far this season, 65% completion
Mm-hmm.
percentage,
Yeah.
906 yards. His 906 yards are the
Yep.
third most by any quarterback ever in their
Yeah.
first 3 career starts.
Yeah. No, I mean credit where credit's due. Like he has done exactly what he needed to do in the situation that he's been put in. And I also want to throw out there that like I think everyone was looking at that situation as like, he's got no weapons. Like Nico Collins hasn't done anything, and Tank Dell's a rookie. Well, Tank Dell's been fucking awesome. The best passer that Nico Collins has had in his career is a giraffe. It turns out when you actually get him someone who's capable of completing passes, Nico Collins can actually do a little bit of something.
I don't know. I kind of like Davis Mills more than my quarterback right now. Throw that out there. Yeah, Tank Dell, been incredible. 15 catches for 251, 2 touchdowns. Like the last 2 weeks, he's balled out. I think
Yeah.
it might just be small boy season in the NFL because he's been awesome. Fellow small boy, Devin A. Chain, 233 yards, 4 touchdowns in Miami's 70-20 win over the Denver Broncos this week. Miami scoring the most points in the NFL since 1966. Their 726 yards is the most in the NFL since 1951. Like, are the
Yeah.
small boys just taking over the NFL? Tank Dell's been awesome at wide receiver. He's 5'10, 165. He's like that's my exact size. He's my size.
Hey, you know what they say. The bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Or Devon Achan, 5'9, 185. Like both of
Yeah.
these guys dropped in the draft because of their size.
Yep.
They've been awesome. So I think the lesson here is t-shirts in the fouled out store that say small boy season. Ready for him.
Since we've touched on that Miami uh game that just so happened to have the Denver Broncos in the physical vicinity of it. Do you happen to know where Mike McDaniel is from?
I'm gonna guess Michigan.
He's a Denver boy, apparently. I learned
Oh,
that
that's right.
today. Yep.
I forgot about that because he did come up in Shanahan's system in
Yep.
Denver. He was like a ball boy for the Broncos.
Yep. I believe he was available when they were they in their last coaching search prior to obviously this fiasco with Sean Payton. Never got an interview. And he just so happens to keep the foot on the gas pretty much all the way up until it's like, all right, it's time to take a knee.
Yeah,
This is absolutely revenge.
I had a lot of fun coaching against the Denver Broncos. I'm not supposed to give that away that I'm actually Mike McDaniel.
You don't know use nearly as much product as that man.
I literally, yeah, my hair's actually down right now while we're recording, which is like a super weird thing for me. But I actually got stopped in a bar in Detroit and someone asked me if I was Mike McDaniel. And it was like a Sunday night. And I was like, yes, I coached earlier today in Miami, flew to Detroit for a concert. And now I'm at a bar at midnight in Detroit. Fantastic fucking logic.
Yeah.
I was just pissed because he almost actually caught me. But Miami absolutely schmeckeldorfs the Denver Broncos. There's no other word for it. Sean Payton might just actually be cooked as a head coach. They're 0-3. This was one of the most embarrassing losses we've ever seen. Like literally ever. To have that many yards, that many points scored against you and not be able to do anything about it.
Yeah. Like to have the audacity to have said what he said about Nathaniel Hackett, which yeah, no one's gonna deny that there was a shitty coaching job done there. But you're saying that about another coach, and you are out here getting your ass handed to you week after week.
This is why I always preach hiring an up and coming coach in every sport instead of recycling these old names and like bringing people back off TV.
Yeah.
Does it work sometimes? Yeah. Like look at the Sacramento Kings this past season. They bring in like an experienced head coach who kind of had some ups and downs and he does a great job. Sometimes it works, but I feel like more often than not, you pay $100 million for Sean Payton, expecting that he's going to come in and like turn this franchise around. And he just looks like he's completely lost it. While Miami has found, I don't know, maybe the best coach in the NFL right now in McDaniel, like certainly the best offensive coach.
So what he's doing with these motions right now, I don't know when anyone's going to figure something out on how to respond to it, especially when you're talking about running it with Waddle and Hill on the field together, because you've got one of them pretty much going at full speed already, and these corners have to figure out what to do as he's crossing that one's path. And the only thing that they can do is back off, which means you are giving Waddle and Hill free releases all game long. There's nothing you can do about that. If you don't get your hands on them, it's done.
The craziest thing about this game is that Waddle didn't even play.
No.
And they scored 70. And it's like, I know Denver sucks, but like 70 points in the NFL is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah.
And honestly, like the thing that made me feel better about the Patriots this weekend was not that we actually won a game, but I was like, holy shit, we held these guys to 24. I have no idea how we did that, but super interested to see this weekend. Miami plays Buffalo. Is it too early to start flexing games? Like, how on earth is Miami
I
versus
mean,
Buffalo a 1 p.m. game and the 8:20 game on Sunday is Kansas City at the Jets? We should be able to flex starting week one and just say, like, okay, I know
yeah.
that the Jets in Kansas City was supposed to be fun because of Rodgers, but not anymore, baby.
How much more of prime time Zach Wilson do we need? I I had my fun joking about Zach Wilson season, but like in all seriousness, we don't need him in prime time.
Yeah, well, this is the problem with the Jets is we're going to
It's a
get him
lot,
on
so
national
much.
television a lot. They Sunday night football against the Chiefs this week. They have the 425 national game at Denver in week 5. They have the 425 national game versus the Eagles in week 6. They have Monday night football against the Chargers, Sunday night football against the Raiders, a national game against the Bills, a national game against the Dolphins, another Sunday night game against the Browns. Like, they're on prime time a lot coming
Yep.
up. It's actually reminds me of the Broncos last year where they put them in prime time every chance they got, and it was awful.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this is just karmic justice
I'm
for
just
them. Like, really, like, sucking off Rodgers here.
I'm just kind of like looking at Sunday, and I'm like, yeah, well, at least I know I'm going to go to bed early, so I'm not staying up to watch that one. The other team that hit rock bottom this week, a team that I actually had thought hit rock bottom before, and then they found a new rockier bottom. The Chicago Bears, ladies and gentlemen, completely no show in a 41-10 loss in Kansas City. Fields doesn't even break 100 passing yards
I
in this game.
so
Ugh.
I'm not even sure if the lowest part of the week happened on the field because their defensive coordinator had to step down because he's being investigated by the FBI. Like, I can't make this up.
I saw a thing today on Reddit. I forget who posted it, but they were saying, has any professional sports team had a worse 7 days than the Chicago Bears? Like, getting their asses kicked last week by Tampa Bay, all the off the field drama that happened this week, and then coming back and getting their asses kicked by Kansas City and have
Yeah,
your first round quarterback just look like absolute crap.
I can't say that you have to get rid of like the entire coaching staff, but I think it's very clear Matt Eberflus not it, right? Because his guys aren't even really playing for him.
Dude, if I
Not
was Poles, I would have walked into that coach room on Monday and been like, "You're all fired. We're done. All of you.
yeah,
You're all out. I'm gonna bring in someone else to coach this team
yeah,
for the rest of the year."
yeah. Well, and here's the thing: is like Eberflus was brought in because of like what he did in Indy. We need to stop giving people head coaching jobs for doing well in coordinator roles when they have high end talent. Yeah, no, I don't think it's super hard to craft a good defense when you have DeForest Buckner in the middle of that defensive line. That guy's an absolute freak. In retrospect, like Eberflus really didn't have to do a whole lot. So why does he have this job?
I honestly, if you're hiring a coach right now and he didn't come from the Shanahan coaching tree, I don't know what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah,
Like, we just talked about Mike McDaniel. D'Amico Ryans looks awesome in Houston so far.
yeah,
I mean, Salah's not been great for the Jets, but like Matt LaFleur has been pretty good for the Packers,
yeah,
at least in the regular season. So
yeah. Well, and like the thing with Robert Saleh is that I just don't think he's gotten his offensive coordinator hiring right either, right? Okay, he's a defensive guy. I guess like maybe his judgment on that might be a little bit compromised, but like I can't really fault him for what he's done on the defensive side of the ball. So
yeah, let me ask you this question, and this is almost an impossible question to answer, but Denver and Chicago play each other this week.
oh god.
one of your friends in the group chat for fantasy football sent a meme that said like flex this game to 3 a.m. on a Wednesday. Who would you rather be a fan of right now? The Broncos or the Bears? I think like
Yeah.
the knee jerk reaction is that like it's obviously you'd rather be a Broncos fan because the Bears are just like so bad. But I have a case for why being a Denver fan might actually be slightly worse, even though I think the Bears maybe had higher hopes for the season.
Okay, let's hear it.
You had a new owner with stereotypical new owner syndrome come
Hmm.
in and make a bunch of stupid mistakes. You're tied to Russell Wilson and Sean Payton for years now because you gave Wilson a deal you can't get out of. We talked about this before. If you cut him right now, it's like $107 million dead cap hit.
Yeah.
You just paid Sean Payton $100 million to come off TV and coach your team, and you're legitimately embarrassing.
Yep.
The Bears, I mean, for as bad as the Bears are, they're going to have their pick in this draft, and they're going to have Carolina's pick in this draft, which, I mean, it's been 3 weeks, but those look like they both might be top five picks in an absolutely loaded draft class. My only problem with the Bears is that if you're a Bears fan, I have no idea how you could trust your team not to absolutely blow this and fall flat on their faces with both of those picks.
Now let me explain where my initial thought process went. Well, I'd rather be the Bears because I don't want all that shit that comes with Denver, right? But again, we have seen the Bears try to do their rebuilds. It doesn't fucking work. And like, yeah, this is a team that drafted Mitchell Trubisky. And then, look, I know where the consensus was on Justin Fields at the time, but they drafted Justin Fields, who it wasn't in an incredibly small group of people who were like, I don't really love his game as a passer. Um, and it hasn't worked out. And I'm not going to say that everything is on Justin Fields. I think that there's certainly a lot that the organization has not done to help develop him, but the results are what they are. Like you said, I don't know how, even with those picks, you can expect them to make it matter. There might be so much talent in that draft that, yeah, the players they draft are like they can't not be hits. But just because you have incredible amounts of talent doesn't mean that you're going to be able to put it together as a team to make it matter.
Is one season of Jay Cutler their best quarterback ever?
Yes, literally,
Yeah.
yes.
I think that's
Like,
why I'd rather be a Broncos
yeah.
fan, is like, at least at the Broncos, you have good memories, right?
Look, everything sucks right now as a Broncos fan, but yeah, so like they could potentially end up with Caleb out of this, and then you're rebuilding in the first years with him. But like, there's a chance for you to turn things around there. Like, I don't know how there's hope if you're a Bears fan, and I know that's not like a logical thing, but like emotionally, if you're a Bears fan, I don't know how you feel like there's hope, right?
I feel like this draft is like giving away a foster dog for me. Yeah, people like foster dogs, and then they give them to their forever home, and they're just like, God, I just want him to go to a good home. I know he's not mine, but I love him, and I just want to make sure he's taken care of. That's me and Caleb Williams. Right? Just like, God, I'm so scared of where Caleb Williams is gonna go, and that he's gonna get ruined because he's gonna go to like Chicago or Denver or like somewhere crappy. And I'm like, I just
Yeah,
want him to go to a good home.
Arizona's playing their way out of it.
Arizona's looking like the preferred destination right now. Jeez.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
it's bad. That's also why I won't foster dogs, because I'll just keep them.
very true. I would love to keep Caleb Williams, but I don't feel like that's an option for me. Uh, Bears play Denver this week in the ultimate. If you can't beat that team, what the fuck are you doing? Game for both sides. I have no idea how that game's gonna go.
Badly.
So
It's going to go badly for everyone involved, especially the fans.
I will not watch. Carlos said he's gonna. Carlos and Trent are both like, "Yep, we're gonna watch it." I'm like, why? You can it's an option to not do that, right? Miami and Buffalo are on at the same time. So
Here's the thing: if they were like, "Yeah, we're gonna go see that game in Chicago," I'd be like, "Hey, if you buy my ticket, I'll go." Just just because I get to be there and experience their reactions there live. Like,
you would just be on a fouled out documentary like a couple years from now when we're
yeah,
making a documentary about the worst football game ever played. You'll be like, I was there. I survived. It'll be like Matt,
you've
Broncos versus Denver or Broncos
Adam,
versus Bears
you've never
Survivor.
watched a Bears game with Carlos.
I have. I have watched the Bears game with Carlos. We went to the Lions Bears game.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Very
yeah, yeah,
entertaining.
yeah. Yeah,
No,
it's an
I
experience, right?
I get it, but you'll be in the documentary and the little thing will pop up that says Matt Husian, Broncos versus Bears Survivor. You'll have like a little patch on your arm and like a little ribbon that's like Broncos and Bears colors, and you're just like, I was there. I made it out.
I would actually like immediately get a tattoo that said that afterwards.
It's beautiful. That
That's my
Matt
tramp stamp.
new segment for the podcast. Something that Matt pitched today. Bolds and Scolds for week 3 of the NFL season. We're going to start doing this every week where we give you a bold, which is a team, a player, a coach, a unit, something that made a bold statement on Sunday or Monday, I guess, maybe even Thursday. And then a scold. And it's the same thing, but the opposite direction. Someone that deserves to be called out on this podcast and dragged out on the rug for something awful that they did to us over the weekend. We'll do bolds first.
Yeah.
You want to go first or second?
I'll let you go first. I'm interested who your bold is.
Okay. This hurts me to do, but my bold is the Cleveland Browns defense.
Yeah.
I sent you the stat over the weekend. The league average for yards allowed before contact this season is 94.2. So through 3 weeks, on average, NFL teams have allowed 94.2 yards before contact in the run game. Cleveland has allowed negative 36. That means that they are almost always hitting the running back in the backfield. They held Derrick Henry to 20 yards on 11 carries this week. Overall, they're allowing 164 yards per game so far, which is 90 less than the number 2 team, the Buffalo Bills, who are allowing about 250. And I'm just really interested to see where these guys go from here on defense. The next 2 games are against Baltimore and San Francisco, 2 of the best running teams in the league, versus a defense that's literally hitting backs in the backfield almost every single play. And I just fascinated to see it.
Yeah, that's gonna be a really fun matchup. So mine is it was gonna be Brian Branch, and the more I thought about it, like it's kind of just the Lions rookies as a whole. They came up huge against the Falcons. I mean, Brian Branch himself had 11 tackles in that game, 3 for loss, 2 pass breakups. Like, he's just always making plays wherever the ball is. 32 just always flashes on the screen out of nowhere. It's incredible. Jack Campbell got a sack. Sam Laporta just absolutely went off for 84 yards and a touchdown. Set the record for like most receptions in by a tight end in their first three games. Jahmyr Gibbs outproduced Bijan Robinson in that game. He ran for 80 yards. We lost we lost two tackles in that game. So the fifth round offensive tackle that was drafted to be a guard and had been practicing at guard all year had to come in and line up against Bud Dupree, who he literally has a jersey of from growing up in Pittsburgh, like, and held his own. So especially with Campbell and Gibbs, the Lions caught a lot of heat during the draft for their draft class, but the results on the field right now are looking real fucking good.
I like that they were like, okay, Bijan Robinson, you are not beating us.
Yep.
If Desmond Ridder can beat us, more power to him.
Yeah.
And they seem like they have that same offense that Florida State has, where they just have really tall receivers, and they're like, okay, if we can't run it, we're just going to chuck it up to him and see what happens. Did not work on Sunday.
Yeah, I think you need a little bit better quarterback to make that work in the NFL.
Yeah. My scold for the week is none other than my favorite team's quarterback, Mac Jones. Matt, I've reached the point where I am actively rooting for us to have a different quarterback. I'm ready to move on from Mac Jones. We're in year 3. I don't want him to be my quarterback anymore. I don't like him. The latest of his antics, he punched Sauce Gardner in the penis over the weekend. It's just, you just don't do that. And a lot of Patriots fans are like, oh man, Sauce, such a bitch. You can't believe he's like accusing Mac of this. But this is not the first dirty thing that he's been accused of. This is like the third different time in less than 3 seasons that a player from the other team has accused him of doing something dirty and like twisting ankles and grabbing legs and doing dirty stuff. I don't like that. He also just like, God, he was just winding up a storm on Sunday. He was underthrowing receivers left and right. They're trying to close out that game and like they desperately need a first down and he's just underthrowing everyone. And then it keeps cutting to him and he's just making this like little pouty face and he's whining and he's throwing his arms up in the air at the receivers like, and he's just can't hit anybody. He got body slammed after a play, like clearly and blatantly an extremely late hit. And he like body slammed and like dog piled on. And there was like multiple Jets like beating him up. Like obviously super dirty by the Jets.
Mm-hmm.
Not a single one of the Patriots offensive linemen went to help him. They left him. And like Devontae Parker like jumped in eventually to help him out and like get him up and out of the Jets way. And that's when he hit Gardner in the dick. But like when you're getting hit after the whistle or you're in like a scruff, whatever, after the whistle, and none of your teammates are coming to help you, I think it's an extremely obvious sign that they don't like him. Yeah, they don't like him because all he does is whine and blame everybody else for his problems. And it's like, yeah, I know Patricia was a bad hire last season, but then like he was calling Alabama during the season. Like, what do I do? How do I blah, blah. I think the rumors that they tried to trade him this offseason are very real. And I think that there's not a whole lot of people in the Patriots organization that like that kid. And I am definitely not one of them because I'm sick of him, man. I'm like, man, we drafted him in the first round, 15th overall pick, like 3 drafts ago. Matt, would you give me a first round pick for Mac Jones right now?
That's a hell no.
No. It's actually kind of funny. It's kind of interesting. I was looking at that draft class, the 2021 draft class. 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 15. If we did a redraft right now, I think Trevor Lawrence still goes in the first round.
Yeah.
But do 2 quarterbacks go in the first round?
That's a hard sell. That's a real hard sell.
I think it's no, because the other quarterbacks are Zach Wilson. That's a no. Trey Lance. We saw what Trey Lance is worth. It was like a 5th-round pick
Yeah. I think it was a fourth, but yeah, that's
or whatever.
still not good.
Justin Fields? No. Mac Jones? I You wouldn't give me a first for him right now. Like if the Falcons are like, hey, this Desmond Ridder thing's not working out, and the Patriots are like, hey, we'll give you Mac for a first. Do you think the Falcons say yes to that?
I don't know. They're giving up a first for him.
Yeah. I don't they're not because one, he's
they're
not
they're not getting a first for him.
no.
Like that maybe you can get a third.
Yeah. Well, like one, he's not good enough. Two, nobody likes him. And it's
Yeah.
very obvious.
I'm going to propose a potential off-season solution for you. You'd have to find a way to unload him still, but is Kirk Cousins potentially something that you would pursue?
I'm gonna say no, not because I don't think Kirk Cousins would be a massive upgrade over him, because he would
Yeah.
be, but I just don't know what the point of that is. Unless we're
Yeah.
bringing in receivers, because
Yeah.
I'll give credit to Jones is that like he doesn't have guys to throw to really, and I think it was apparent again in the Jets game. But
Mm-hmm.
I would only go after like a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins if I thought I could compete next season, and
Yeah.
with this offense, I don't think we can. So,
Yeah.
who is your scold for week 3?
So this was like a journey for me throughout the weekend of football as to who it was going to be. It started out as Ryan Tannehill. Then it was going to be like the refs in general. And then I watched the primetime games, the last primetime games of the week. And what just really caught my eye was bad coaching decisions. And Sean McVay was the one who like really made it to where I couldn't ignore it anymore. But like Josh McDaniels was like almost just as bad. So both of these guys had opportunities inside the 5-yard line on 4th down where they decided to not go for the touchdown and just take the field goal. In McDaniels' case, it was at the end of the game when they were down 8. And after the game, he was quoted as saying, well, we needed to score twice anyways.
Sounds like a Josh McDaniels thing to do.
But for me, with McVay, it was like you got your defense playing the best they possibly could against this wide receiving core that you know is dangerous, and you keep taking 3 points, knowing full and well that eventually they're going to get in the end zone because you can't hold down Jamar Chase all game long. But you're just like, yeah, like hopefully we can win with 9 or 12 points. And like, sure enough, Jamar Chase finally broke through that saran wrap. As well, they couldn't protect their quarterback all game long. And they refused to run the ball at all. Like, at all. To the point where the announcers were begging them to run the ball. Still refused to do that. And I'll need to watch the all 22 to confirm it, but it didn't look like they were running plays that were giving Stafford hot reads either. Like they were just letting them tee off and hoping that they could get shots downfield by protecting him, and they couldn't.
It was a tough game plan, especially against a defensive coordinator who is as good as Anarumo is.
Yeah.
I was glad to see he was actually getting some shine on Monday Night Football because I feel like he's been one of the major catalysts of Cincinnati's run. It's like him and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase
Yeah, I mean he's the best coach on that team.
by far.
Yeah.
Uh, Glad to see the Jamar Chase bounce back game too, because I called that last week. I was like, this is the Jamar Chase get right game. He goes 12 catches, 145.
Yeah, I mean it took a minute. And like to Raheem Morris's credit, like they had a pretty good plan, but it's like when you and this goes back to again to Sean McVay just refusing to try anything other than chucking the ball 50 times a game. Like you're letting them tee off on you, having these short offensive drives, and you keep giving Jamar Chase more tries. Like
I've always had that problem with McVay, though, is that he comes up with really good game plans,
mm-hmm.
but when they don't work, the in-game adjustment aspect of coaching is like not all there with him. It's
Yeah,
not as good as it should be for a coach who's that smart.
McVay and Shanahan are really like interesting guys to compare and contrast because of like their schematic capacity and in some ways similarities with their scheme. Um, but it's really interesting to me in that like Shanahan can kind of adapt a little bit in game if he needs to. Um, whereas like McVay cannot, but McVay is much better at like making bigger, more broad sweeping changes to his offense, like over the course of an off season or between games. Whereas Shanahan doesn't really do that at all.
And then on the other side, we have Mike McDaniel, who's like, we don't need changes where we're going, baby. Woo! 70 points.
Yeah, like someone would have to stop them for him to consider making changes.
Yeah, you don't fix what's not broken.
Yeah.
Last thing before we sign off, we had Kansas City this past week in the eliminator pool, who absolutely mollywopped the Chicago Bears. That was a no sweat one, just like from the beginning of the game. It was like almost 28-0 when they kicked the ball. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're good.
That game also like it really like goes to kind of prove just how much vengeance there was with Miami because they went up like 41-0 almost immediately in the second half and then they just pulled everyone and shut the offense down. Miami was still like, no, we are going scorched earth.
I was actually kind of surprised they didn't kick the field goal to set the scoring record at the end. They could have, and they took a knee.
That was
like,
literally the only concession that they made the entire game.
Yeah. So we had a good pick in the eliminator pool last week. However, a very large portion of the pool, approximately 44.36%, did not have a good pick, as that was the amount that was actually taken out last week. That was like the culling week. We talk about this every year, is that like there'll be too many good weeks in a row where it's like, oh yeah, 5% was eliminated, 4% was eliminated. And then there's just a week where the culling comes and half of the thing gets eliminated. So that was last week. Worst pick was Jacksonville. They had 24.33% of the pick.
Yeah.
Brutal. Cowboys were also up there. The Ravens were up there. I think the Cowboys had 15%. The Ravens had like 7 or 8. Like all the upsets we talked about earlier led to just brutality in the pool.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to break one of our rules this week. I think, we saw why you don't break the rules last week with Houston destroying Jacksonville in a division game. But our options right now are the Fighting Georges at the Eagles. Could pick the Eagles. Cardinals at 49ers. Can take the 49ers. Unfortunately, we cannot take Kansas City over the Jets because we took Kansas City last week.
Mm-hmm.
A couple other like sneaky options. The Raiders are at the Chargers, and the Vikings are at the Panthers. If you don't think the Vikings are going to go 0-4, not touching Broncos versus Bears. Those are like the two teams that I would bet against the most are the Broncos and the Bears, and they're playing each other. So they're wrapped up. So those are really the good options right now. My proposal is that we go with the 49ers over the Cardinals.
Yeah, that would be my take. As much as I respect what the Cardinals have done, I'm having a hard time convincing myself that they're going to be able to pull that off 2 weeks in a row.
That's exactly where I'm at, is I just don't see them beating the Cowboys and the 49ers back to back.
Yeah, and like I think there's a bit of emotional exhaustion too from pulling off that upset too.
So San Francisco over the Cards it is. I'm locking it in. My only fear is that it's the most popular pick so far this week. It has 31.5%.
How often do you have back-to-back culling weeks?
No, God, don't say that out loud. But yeah, no, I think this week will probably be like a quiet week, knock on wood, where like, 4 or 5% of the people get knocked out. And the culling is when you don't expect it. Like we just had the culling, so everybody's on high alert. It'll come like week 6 or week 7, and there'll be another massive upset. But for now, that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at Fouled Out Sports. You can find Matt on Twitter at Matador_defense. And you can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It's a long name, but you can't miss it. Great week of college football last week. Not as exciting this week. However, before we get to the weekend, we have a Thursday night football game. The Detroit Motor City Kitties at the Green Bay Packers. That one should be a lot of fun. Both 2-1.
Yeah.
Winner is leading the NFC North after 4 weeks of the season.
The irrational, fanatical fan part of me definitely wanted to suggest that as a pool pick, but that's breaking 2 rules in the same game.
It breaks 3 rules.
Shit.
It's a Thursday division road team.
Yeah.
It's like all the rules. And it's not
right.
the best team we can get against the worst team we could get, so it breaks 4 rules.
Yeah.
Let's do it anyway.
I do think the 2-1 record for the Packers is a pretty big shame when you look at how they got to it. But I'm very excited for that game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Lions fans. But yeah, I mean, it's Thursday night. Anything can happen. So
that's the thing. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a statement game for the Lions, but also it's a Thursday night. And say what you will about Jordan Love. He may only complete 50% of his passes, but he wins games and he throws touchdowns. Damn it.
It's sounding like Decker and Montgomery might be back. Knock on wood. So getting those 2 back for this game would be a huge boost because as well as Colby Sorsdale did at right tackle, I don't want to see him there again. I would much rather Penei Sewell switch right back over there, get Taylor Decker back in, and let Montgomery do what he does.
Fingers crossed for you guys. I will be rooting for you, believe it or not. So, but all right, my friend, enjoy the game on Thursday, and we will be back next week to break down week 4 of the NFL season.
Yep.
All right.
TP.
Bye, guys.
Bye, Robin.